Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Ollie. Welcome to the next tutorial in this series of Java for Beginners. In this tutorial we're going to be learning how to read from and write to a file. Now it's pretty simple, there's just a couple of objects that we need to learn about and how they work. But effectively we're going to be creating something called a stream, and it's basically like a sort of pipeline that's opened up between Java and the file that we're reading or writing. And we send data along to and from that stream, and then once we're finished we're going to close that stream to make sure that no sort of errors occur. So what we're going to do is we're going to first of all going to learn how to write a file, and then we're going to read from the file. So to write to a file we're going to need two objects. We're going to need something called a buffered writer and a file writer. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to make a new buffered writer object, and this buffered writer is basically going to open up the stream between us and the file, and it's going to provide us with all the functions we need to write to that file, such as write line, new line, and also opening and closing the stream. So you can see if I hit Alt and Enter, we need to add an import for this, java.io.bufferedWriter. There you are. You can see it up there. So we're going to set buffered writer and we're going to call it write, and we're going to set it equal to a new buffered writer, like so. And as a constructor, this takes something called a writer, and now the writer is just the superclass for the object we need to provide. We're actually going to provide a file writer because we want to write to a file. It doesn't have to be just used for writing to files. You can write to certain input streams inside Java, but I'm showing you how to write to a file in this tutorial. So instead of creating a new file writer object and then sort of creating up here like file writer equals new file writer and then putting it in, we can actually just write in this constructor here, just say new file writer, like so. And this might be a new concept that you've seen. Let me just type writer. There we go. So you may not have seen this used before, and I'm just going to import that, java.io.filewriter. But this is perfectly valid because the constructor of the buffered writer says it needs a writer, and there's no reason why we can't just create that new writer on the spot. So we're literally just creating this new file writer within the constructor because we don't actually need to use this file writer object anywhere else. The only thing that's being used for is to show this buffered writer where the stream is. If we did need to use this file writer at some other point, we would probably make it a new object, because by doing this in here we can't actually access it outside of that constructor. So this file writer now takes a parameter. It takes lots of different things. Easiest one is just a string, and it's the file name. So I'm going to go ahead and say C users Oliver desktop, and then we're gonna basically say the name of the file we want to create. So I'm just going to make a text file, test.txt, like so. And you can see that this is underlined in red. Why is this? It's because there's an unsupported exception, IO exception, and it must be caught or declared to be thrown. So we need to surround this in either try or catch, or we can do something called throw, make the method throw the error. So try and catch is all very well, but the problem is everything we're going to do in this tutorial video would need to be surrounded in one big try and catch block, and that's still perfectly valid, but it doesn't look very neat when you're writing. So what we can do is we can make this main method here do something called throw the error itself, so there's no need for try and catch. So let me just go ahead and do that, and then I'll explain it more. So after we've written this string args, we're going to write the word throws IO exception, like so. And the IO exception is an input-output exception, and it's basically the error that's going to be thrown if anything goes wrong during us doing this tutorial. So we're going to import that again, java.io exception. And what's happening here is instead of us doing try and catch and catching the error if something goes wrong, we're actually telling the Java compiler that the main method is going to throw the IO exception if something goes wrong. So there's no need to catch it because this method is going to throw it for us. So that's just something else you can know about exceptions that's quite useful if you ever need to do it. But one important thing to remember is that if you have a method that throws an IO exception, or not just an IO exception, if you have a method that throws any exception, when you call that method elsewhere, that method that you call it in is going to need to throw the exception, or you're going to need to put it in a try and catch. So now that we've learned about that exception, we have our buffered writer called write. So now what can we do with it? Well, by default, when you create the new object, the stream is opened up between us and the file that we've just created. So what we're going to do now is we're going to write access that buffered writer object right, and we're going to say dot, and you can see that there's loads of different methods. You can see new line, and it's just off the screen. Let me scroll down. It's just off the screen. There we go. Alright, so we can say call our write object, and then within that buffered writer write object we can call the method write, and you can see it takes lots of different things. The one we're going to be using is a string, so we can write stuff to the string. We can say hello world, and then we'll say write dot new line, and then we can say write dot write again. This is a test. So we've written we've called it might be confusing because they're named the same thing, but write, the first write we see here is the name of the object, the buffered writer here, and then the dot write is the method of buffered writer, and it just writes something to the file. So hello world, and then we make a new line, we say this is a test. So that's all very well, but if our program ends like this, it means the stream is still open between the file and Java, and it's going to cause some problems in the future, such as if you tried to delete it, it would say this file is open in another program and can't be deleted. So we're going to make sure that we close the stream between Java and the file so no errors are caused later on. So it's pretty simple to do this. We call our buffered writer object and we simply say close, like so. So now this program is actually done. If I go ahead and hit run, you can see it's going to say build success, 0 seconds, and we didn't print out anything to the screen. We probably should have, just to show us, but this buffered writer has now made us a file, and I'll go to my desktop and you can see it's made this test file here. So now when I open it up, you can see hello world, this is a test. So now that we've got this test file here, if I can find netbeans, there we go. Now that we've got this test file and we've made it, we're going to learn how to we're going to learn how to read it, sorry. So I'm going to comment this out. So I'm just going to comment that out because we don't want to rewrite the file we've done, but I do want to keep it there just so you guys can see it. And that's another point actually. If you use the buffered writer again, if I run that program again, it's actually going to overwrite any file that it's going to overwrite the file that you're trying to make without any warning. So if you have a file that's sort of quite valuable, you don't want to lose it, make sure it's not named the same as that, because Java's going to overwrite it without any warning at all. So how do we read? Well, it's pretty much the same layout as this, except we change the word writer to reader. So we're going to make a buffered reader called read, and we're going to import this, java.io. Everything we've imported today is from the java.io package. We're going to say buffered reader read equals new buffered reader, and you probably guessed, as a parameter we can take a new file reader, and then as a parameter for that it takes a string, and what is that string? It's going to be the file location. So let's copy and paste that. There we go. So now it's going to read a file from there. So we can say read and then say dot read, whatever, read line, and this was quite straightforward here, just writing to the file. It's slightly different when we want to read something. The easiest way I find to do it is to use a while loop to make sure we read through every line of code. So, or every line from the file, sorry. We're going to make a string called line, and then we're going to leave that uninitialized for the moment, but we're going to say while we're basically going to say while the next line that we read is not equal to null, and null basically means non-existent, nothing. So whilst there is still a next line, we want to read it. And to do this, we're actually going to set this equal to something within this while loop parameter. So it's a clever trick we use, so that I'll show you in just a second. We're going to say whilst line equals read dot read line, then come out the brackets is not equal to null, because if we said while read.readLine is not equal to null, and then we read the line again, it means that it's already read the line, and it's when we come down here it's going to move on to the next one. So what we're doing is we're setting this line variable equal to that within the while loop, and then we've put brackets around it, so this is treated as one thing. So whilst the line that we're reading is not equal to null, we can do stuff with it in here, and we're simply going to say system.out.println line. So now when I hit run, you can see that it prints out the contents of the file, and if I actually open up this file again and we change the contents of it, so just writing just random characters and doing more than one line like so, and then save that and close it, you can see that when I run, it will print out what's inside the file.